All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tuning into this invisible battle that's happening all around us, one that affects millions of people every single day. We're talking about the fight over how Japan allocates its radio waves. Now, I know it sounds super technical, but this debate is really about the signal that connects your phone to, well, everything. I mean, have you ever really thought about it? That signal, it doesn't just magically appear. It travels on radio waves, and those waves are a finite and incredibly valuable public resource, kind of like land or water. So who gets to decide which company uses which slice of the airwaves? That is the multi-trillion yen question at the heart of all this. You know, in Japan, this all comes down to a choice between two totally different ways of thinking. For decades, it's been the review system. Basically, government officials look at applications and just assign the frequencies. But now there's this major push for an auction system where companies would have to bid for them. It's a method that's already used in over 40 countries, so it's not exactly a new idea. Okay, so let's get into the first side of this debate. What are the big arguments for making this switch to an auction system? Why are people so passionate about this? The people who support auctions, they really build their case on three main ideas. First, making the whole process fair and open for everyone to see. Second, generating a huge amount of money for the country. And third, creating a more competitive market that, at the end of the day, is supposed to benefit all of us. The biggest knock on the current system is that it's basically a black box, right? Decisions are made behind closed doors, and critics worry this can lead to favoritism. They often point to the 2021 allocation for Rakuten Mobile as an example, where the whole process raised a lot of questions about whether the playing field was really level. An auction, they say, gets rid of all that subjective stuff and just comes down to the numbers. And speaking of numbers, to really get the financial stakes here, just look at this. Roughly 8 trillion yen. That's what the US government made from a single 5G auction back in 2020. So people in Japan see that, and they imagine this massive new source of cash for public projects, all from selling access to a resource we all own. And the bottom line for the pro-auction side is this. They believe a fair, open auction would finally break the stranglehold of the big existing carriers. If you lower the barrier to entry, new and maybe more innovative companies could get a real shot. And what does that lead to? More competition, better service, and, the part we all care about, lower monthly bills. But of course, that's only half the story. The auction system has some really powerful opponents. So let's take a look at the very serious concerns they're raising. The opposition also has three key arguments. They're afraid that the huge cost of these auctions will just get passed right on to us, the consumers. They also worry it'll actually kill competition by only letting the richest companies play. And, maybe most alarmingly, that it could seriously damage Japan's entire communications infrastructure. This quote, it just gets right to the heart of their biggest fear. Think about it. If a company spends trillions of yen just to get the radio waves, where are they going to get that money back from? Well, the obvious answer is from their customers. That would mean higher phone bills for all of us, which would totally cancel out any of the supposed benefits. And here's the twist. Contrary to what the other side says, opponents believe this system would make things less competitive. They argue that only the three major carriers have pockets deep enough to win a crazy bidding war, and that could lock out smaller and regional players for good, making the current oligopoly even stronger. And you know, this isn't just some theory they're worried about. They point to real-world examples, like what happened in Germany with the 3G auction. Companies paid so much to win the bids. We're talking around 7 trillion yen, that they had no money left over to actually build the infrastructure. It led to a total financial mess and a super slow, painful rollout of the new tech. So we've got two very compelling but completely opposite stories here. With such strong points on both sides, let's just put them head to head and see where they clash. What's really fascinating here is how this just lays the whole conflict bare. On every single key issue, from what happens to our phone bills, to whether new companies can compete, to how we protect the public good, the two sides have a directly opposing view of what an auction would do. One side sees a path to lower prices, the other sees a path to higher bills. It's a total standoff. So this is where the pro-auction side comes back with a really important question. They say, look, you're only thinking about a simple highest bidder wins auction. What if, they ask, you could design a smarter system? And this is their big idea, a hybrid auction. So instead of just looking at who bids the most money, the government would also score bidders on their technology plan, their commitment to service quality, and, this is a big one, their obligation to provide coverage in rural areas. It's a model that places like Norway use to try and balance making money with doing what's best for the public.
But as you can probably guess, the anti-auction side is not convinced. They argue that creating some super complex scoring system doesn't actually solve the problem of things being decided behind closed doors. It just replaces one set of bureaucrats making a decision with a new, more complicated set of rules that could still be bent. Same problem, different package.
So, after all this back and forth, this clash of big ideas and practical worries, where does that leave us? What's the final takeaway here?
Well, in the formal debate that this whole explainer is based on, the judges did actually pick a winner, and they found that the arguments from the pro-auction side, especially their ideas about a hybrid system, were more persuasive and more forward-looking. But let's be real, a debate verdict isn't a policy decision. The actual choice for Japan as a society is so much more complex. It's not about who wins an argument, it's about building the best possible communications future for the entire country. And that brings us to the final, really big question that's still hanging in the air. At its core, this isn't just about auctions versus reviews. It's a fundamental choice of values. Should Japan go for the efficiency, the transparency, and the potential revenue of a market-based system, or should it stick with the stability and the protection of the public interest that the current government-led approach offers? There really is no easy answer.